Hello from wherever you are tuning in from around the world. Thanks for checking out the channel again. We're going to do a part 2 here, or an episode 2 in Understanding Tarot. And this one might be a little bit different than what you're used to and how you look at the major arcana. I'll be breaking down the minor arcana, of course, as well, somewhat in a similar way. Now, last time I talked about the magician and the fool, and how we are all the fool. We are God's emanation of, we're the emanation of God's will put into this world, and then given the will to do what we want, in a sense. And the magician, again, is the realization that we have to use the tools we were given in order to get the things that we want, rather than just meandering through life and hoping they come our way. Just doesn't work that way. So here we come to this picture, which is a different way of organizing the major arcana. I've grouped them into different sections, and there's little clues. That's the beauty of tarot. The beauty of tarot is there's small clues along the way as to how things should be grouped. So maybe we should call this Tarot Decoded. So our first step is going from the Fool to the Magician. The first block that you see here, you see 9 cards, aka the 9 gates. That's been talked about in literature a few times. There's 9 gates to heaven, 9 gates to hell. The very famous movie, The Ninth Gate. Well, okay, the cult classic, The Ninth Gate, I should say. And there's something to that. So the big block represents the 9th gate, or the 9 gates. The first 3 are basically rites of passage in a way. They're kind of like portals to something more. Something you have to adopt within yourself. So these are the High Priestess, the Hierophant, and the Hermit. And if you notice that they're all kind of similarly colored, if we go with the classic Rider-Waite-Smith, Pamela Coleman Smith was very clever that way. In a lot of ways, you have to look at this like it's an engineered project. Things don't happen by accident. So with the High Priestess, the Hierophant, and the Hermit, you'll notice that they're all kind of mostly singular figures, mostly kind of in their own way eminent figures, and the cards are in general colored very similarly as well. So it's kind of how we know that they're paired together. So these are kind of seminal moments in one's life is what these represent. They don't represent a person or anything like that. I mean, they can in a placement reading, but if we're going just pure decoding the tarot, what this is this is the journey of your life. Tarot is a mirror to the soul, as they say, and if we're talking about classic philosophy, the best thing to do is to look within before looking out. As the temple at Delphi said, know thyself, and it's one of the toughest things to do. So in this episode, we'll be talking about the High Priestess, the Hierophant, and the Hermit. So on the far right, we have 4 different clusters of 3 cards each. Again, the Magician, the Empress, and the Emperor, which we'll talk about here in a moment. Those are, again, things you need to adopt in yourself. And you'll notice that we generally have yellow skies. The Emperor, his sky is a little bit more dusky. It's to represent completion. And then next to it, again, things we must adopt in ourselves. The Lovers, the Chariot, and Strength. Again, similarly colored skies, so you know that they belong together. But where on the journey they are, it's a specific spot. We'll come to that. Today, we're going to talk about basically from the Magician through the Emperor and the first 3 gates. And in the other episodes, we're going to deal with the rest. So as we can see in these pictures, we don't need to group the Fool. And specifically, we don't need to group the Fool because we all go through that. We are all the Fool. We all start as the Fool. Sorry for the egotistical out there, but you don't know everything right off the bat. So once we go from the Fool and then realize, oh, we have to do the work for ourselves and start using our own tools, that's when we come to the first gateway, which is the High Priestess. The High Priestess is the first gateway to seeing within yourself. Now, some people, I would say, only halfway go through this cycle. If you've ever met somebody so we have the adult, you've heard of the psychological term, the adult children, or a man-child. Some people say that in a cheeky manner, a man-child. That is somebody who went through the gateway, realized okay, there is something within myself, but they only get it half finished. So immediately after the High Priestess, we have the Empress and the Emperor. And the Empress and the Emperor are interesting because in a lot of ways they represent the two external pillars of the Tree of Life. When it comes to the Empress, this specific card represents kindness, caring, being one with nature, understanding how to nurture those around you. In a lot of ways, it's a very left-hand pillar thing. Now, if you want to get in Sephira, on the left-hand column, you have Binah, Geburah, and Hod. And what these translate to is understanding, strength, and splendor. Sounds a good bit like the Empress. Now, really, she has to do with the pathway to better understand yourself and your path in life. But the reason that the Empress immediately comes after the High Priestess is because you always have to put your own oxygen mask on first, as they say. You always have to be understanding and kind towards yourself. That doesn't necessarily mean at the expense of others, for sure. Many people forget that. But in this case, what we're talking about is being kind and understanding toward your necessity to learn. It's going to be a long, troubled road in a lot of ways. Well, it's going to be a long, difficult road in a lot of ways. And you never know exactly what road you're going to go down in life. So it's best to understand how to stay connected with yourself, also stay connected with nature, so that as you travel through the gateways and the troubles ahead, the realizations ahead especially, you can give yourself the kindness and the time to get to them. Now after that, and kind of the end of a cycle, it's a mini cycle, we have the Emperor, number 4. This is why the sky in the classic Rider-Waite Smith here, that's why the sky is a bit orange. It's to represent dusk. And what we're talking about here is the realization that you also, like we talked about with temperance in the last video, you have to have 1 foot in the water and 1 foot on the ground. And the Emperor is very much the ground. He's the material. Now, again, a lot of people want to be too on the nose with this stuff. It doesn't, when we're talking about, strictly decoding the tarot, and we're not talking about a placement spread, the Emperor doesn't necessarily mean a specific guy. It has nothing to do with the patriarchy. The Empress has nothing to do with the matriarchy, stuff like that. These are political agendas or social agendas of modern day stuff. So one of the things you have to do when reading tarot is check your baggage at the gates. So going back to the specifics of the Emperor, again, as we all know, it's all about stability, structure, authority, finding a foothold in the material world, specifically structure, understanding that in order for things to work in the 3D, there has to be rules. There's just no bones about it. You can try to be completely left column. Those that do, they have very big trouble paying their bills. They have boundary issues with people. People generally walk all over them as well, take a lot from them. So the Emperor is the realization that for yourself, you need to have boundaries. You need to have structure. Even if we talk about something simple like health, you need a good night's sleep. You need to not go wild on calories every day. You need that kind of structure. Same thing with you need a job. We take on a job whenever. It doesn't matter what job you take on. There's lots of rules with that. Why? Because otherwise the job doesn't work. The business doesn't function, whether you're running the business or somebody else is. So this is where structure and rules come from. And these three, so the Magician, the Empress, and the Emperor, are things that we take on within ourselves. Really, the Magician is kind of almost a self-initiation rite, realizing we need to use these tools. Then you go through the High Priestess, which is, okay, that's the first gateway into inner realization. And then you get into all the accoutrements of the Empress. I have to understand how to be kind and nurturing towards myself. I have to understand how to take care of myself. And then you go on to the Emperor and realize, oh, part of taking care of myself is creating boundaries, is creating rules for myself, is creating the structure in my life so that I can get the material things that I need. And that's when we get to the next gateway, which is the Hierophant. And the Hierophant is all about, it's a gateway of, if the High Priestess is a gateway of kind of self-realization, the Hierophant is the gateway of taking all those self-realizations and saying, okay, I'm sort of ready to go out into the world now. This is why the Hierophant is all about education and social groups and stuff like that. Yes, it's an archetype, like many of these things, but that's an oversimplification. I guess if you look on, if you look in the little tarot book that comes in the pack of cards that you get, you'll get these simple explanations that it's all about tradition and education and conformity and stuff like that. But it's a symbolism that, you know just enough now. You know just enough about yourself to go out into the world. But, you got training wheels on, or as they say in England, stabilizers on, as you're going out there in the world. It doesn't mean you know everything. It means you know just enough to take care of yourself. You haven't even truly been challenged yet. As we're challenged, that is the point of the next gate, which is the Hermit. And the Hermit is all, we talked about it a little bit last time. The Hermit is all about going back within yourself to understand, or better understand, how you feel after the things you've been through. So what is it that you've been through? At this point, a bit, which is why after the Hierophant, we have the Lovers, the Chariot, and Strength. You're starting to go through things. You're starting to venture out into the world, and you're seeing, oh, there's a lot of distraction. There's a lot of dazzle. There's a lot of, the world spends much of its time telling you aren't enough. You're not good enough. You're not prepared enough. So after the Hierophant, before we get to the Hermit and the going back into oneself, we have the Lovers as the first one up. So number 6 card. And this is one of those where people take it way too on the nose again. Yes, the Lovers essentially is about relationships in a way. But what comes with relationships is struggle. The struggle to bring something into your life. And that's why if you look at the little packet in your box of cards, upright, it's talking about how it's about love, union, partnerships, and all that jazz. And reverse, it's disharmony, imbalance, conflict, and all that jazz. Why is that? That's because when it comes to any relationship, it is a struggle. In a way, it's not a struggle as in you need conflict. It's a struggle to maintain the things that you want to see in the relationship. Doesn't mean it has to be a tough struggle. Don't get me wrong there. It doesn't have to be overly difficult and challenge you to the ends of your wits and stuff like that. But there will be some sort of compromise in a way. Where people get it wrong is they think struggle or compromise has to be all-encompassing. It has to envelop your entire life. And that's not true. That's kind of a toxic thought. So after that, we have the Chariot. And the Chariot, again, these are grouped together for a very specific reason. So you have the struggle of understanding how to join the world, essentially. It's not necessarily about romantic relationships. It's just about unions and partnerships. So you have the Hierophant, and that's the realization. I can take my inner tools and go out into the world. Then you have to learn how to deal with the world, which is the Lovers. As you're learning how to deal with the world, the reason the Chariot is after that is because the Chariot's talking about how to drive yourself to success. How focused are you? Are you going to let the world trounce you, or are you going to do your best to still get the things that you need, the self-care that you need inside? Does that mean you're an asshole about it? No. That's taking toxic traits to the nth degree again. Just like, the struggle in a relationship doesn't have to mean conflict. It just means there is a give and take. The Chariot, likewise, doesn't mean that you drive over puppies and little children on your way to maintaining your goals. It just means, how focused are you? That's it. Some people don't have any focus going through this life, and it's much to their detriment. So you have to be careful. And once you realize that, you get the next card after that, which is Strength. Once you have this realization that you have to maintain focus, which in a way the Chariot's reaffirming the Magician, saying not only do we have to use these tools, but we have to remain focused on using these tools. Once you have that personal realization and you adopt that into your life, that's when you realize you have the strength to move forward. And that's what Strength is all about. So again, if you look at the little packet that comes with the cards inside the box for the deck, Strength is all about courage and bravery, the things we all know. And of course, reversed, it's all about self-doubt and low confidence, etc., etc. And that's why Strength is right before the Hermit. That's the next gateway that you get to, because you're going through all these things in life at this point that are challenging you, realizing there are struggles. You do have to find a way of driving forward to get to what you need, and you do need to find the strength, sometimes even when you don't have it. And that's when the Hermit comes along, the archetype, if you want to use archetype, but the meaning of the Hermit comes along, where you have to go back into yourself, sometimes to find the strength, sometimes to find the drive or the focus, sometimes to understand things from the other viewpoint in a relationship. Again, not necessarily a romantic relationship, working relationship, a civil relationship, society, stuff like that. It's all give and take. The Lover supports your struggle. It supports the give and take of strength, the give and take of your focus, and how you're going to apply focus to a relationship you're in, how you're going to apply strength to a relationship you're in. And we come to that realization, that reflection, by going back in and reflecting within ourselves through moments that the Hermit represents. Which, again, the little book in your card pack, the Hermit represents self-reflection and contemplation, and when reversed, of course, it represents isolation and loneliness or rejection, stuff like that. If you're not doing it right, you can get stuck. Many people, especially these days, many people get stuck at this gateway. They don't know how to incorporate the 3 prior cards. They don't know how to unionize, stay focused, or stay strong in a relationship, especially just with the general world. Meeting a lot of people these days. You see it online. A lot of clients come for card readings. They're just struggling with how to approach the world. And because they don't actively reflect on that, some people want to refuse to reflect, and refusing to go through that self-reflection basically automatically puts you into self-isolation. So that brings us through the first 3 gates or gateways, kind of basically self-realization. So the High Priestess it's just an initiatory, I have to take these things on board. The Hierophant is the gateway to, I now have to take these things that I've incorporated in myself out into the world. And then the Hermit is the gateway of, okay, now that I've dealt with the world, how do I maintain my own self, my own self-worth, my own sense of meaning in order to get the things that I want? Or maybe the realization that what I want doesn't work with the world, which again can be very challenging to a lot of people, depending on the environment that they grew up in, the things that they were taught. Now, an interesting application to this, you can also attribute these cards and these specific groupings to are the chakra system, which I do very often. So essentially in this episode, what we talked about, so the Magician, the Emperor, the Empress, and the first crux of the first three, that's your root chakra. Taking all that in, realizing you need to have self-care, you need to also deal with the material world. That is totally the root chakra. Now, how you decide to do those things has to do with the environment that you live in, the culture you live in, the family that you live in, the things that they teach you. After that, then we get the sacral chakra, which we basically just talked about, which is the Lovers, the Chariot, and Strength, which is, how do I cooperate with the world? How do I focus and drive my way through the world and find the strength to do so? The strength in this case to enact on the feelings that I have based on the things in my root chakra. So thanks for watching. In the next video, I'll be talking about the next three gateways: Death, the Devil, and the Tower. And finally, after that, we'll deal with the final three. Now, all of this is just the basics of tarot. Divining or pulling in energy to read it for someone else is a skill that is placed on top of this, which we'll get to, probably in a fourth video, because there are some differences between the major and the minor arcana. And then after that, I'll start a series in the minor arcana and finally wrap up with divining through the minor arcana suits. So if you have any questions, just throw it in the comments below, or you can contact me through the website. See you next time.